ever catch yourself kind of searching for that equilibrium in your relationships?
Equilibrium.
Yeah, like whose voice gets heard, who gets to make the decisions, who picks the restaurant when you go out.
Ah, the age-old question.
Exactly. And it's funny because we talk about balance in relationships,
Right.
but we're diving deep into all that today power dynamics and how to actually make them healthy.
And you'd be surprised how often people think it's just about splitting everything 50-50.
Like a perfectly even pie chart.
Exactly. But that's not the full picture, is it?
Not even close. And that's where this deep dive comes in. We're looking at finding balance in intimate relationships.
Oh, I love that book.
And it really unpacks that whole 50-50 myth.
It does.
They've got this couple, Emma and Jake,
Okay.
and their story really shows how tricky balance can get.
It's so relatable because initially, Emma's totally drawn to Jake's strong personality. But over time, she starts feeling, well, a little overshadowed.
You ever feel that, even when someone's not trying to be domineering?
Absolutely. And that's where the book introduces these two key abilities that make up what they call personal power.
Okay, break that down for us.
So it's the ability to influence your partner,
Okay.
which makes sense.
But also, and this is key, the ability to resist their influence when you need to.
So it's not just about one person always getting their way.
Exactly. It's about each person having a voice and feeling comfortable using it.
But what happens when you don't even realize you're not using your voice?
See, that's when things get tricky.
And that's where Emma's story really hit home for me, wanting to live in a different neighborhood but not speaking up. Yes. And it's not just about the neighborhood, right? It's that feeling of maybe my needs aren't that important.
Or that maybe you're being too picky.
Yes. And the source emphasizes this isn't about where you live or what you eat for dinner. It goes way deeper.
Okay, how so?
There's this quote from psychologist Amelia Campbell. She says, this kind of power imbalance can make you feel totally isolated, even when you're physically with your partner.
Wow, that's a heavy thought, to be in the same room but feel totally alone.
Right. It's like you're both in the same boat, but only one person's rowing.
Exhausting. And the source says that's when you start risking damage, not just to the relationship itself, but to your own sense of self-worth. So how do we even start to notice these subtler power imbalances, especially when they kind of sneak up on you? Because ignoring them clearly isn't the answer.
It's kind of like pretending that leaky faucet in the bathroom doesn't exist.
Oh, you mean it's not going to magically fix itself?
Exactly. In fact, it's probably going to get worse. Right.
You're totally right. Water damage is no joke. But thankfully, ignoring the problem isn't the only option in this scenario.
Exactly. And the source lays out some really helpful solutions using Emma and Jake's story as a roadmap.
Right, like they actually figure out how to shift their dynamic, Emma finds her voice, and things start to get really interesting.
And it's so key here, finding your voice. It's not about suddenly calling all the shots or anything. Remember, balance isn't about one person having all the power.
It's about creating space for both people to, I don't know, just be their full selves without feeling like they have to shrink or disappear, you know?
Yes. And what really struck me was how the book highlights Jake's response. When Emma does start speaking up, he's totally receptive.
Yeah.
It's like he had no idea how his actions were impacting her.
Which I guess speaks to why open communication is so important in the first place, right? Like sometimes we just don't realize how our behavior is landing until someone tells us.
100%. It's like we all have these blind spots, and honest feedback helps us see them.
So the source breaks down how Emma and Jake actually start to recalibrate things. They've got these 4 strategies, which I have to say, they feel really actionable.
Yeah, that's super practical. So the first one is probably the most obvious, open communication.
Which, easier said than done sometimes, right?
Right, but it's more than just talking. It's about being intentional, learning how to actually communicate effectively.
Because we can all talk. That doesn't mean we're actually saying what we need to say or really listening to the other person.
Exactly. Like the source mentions how Emma had to practice expressing her needs clearly and respectfully.
Makes sense.
And Jake.
Yeah.
He really had to work on his listening skills, like really hearing what she was saying without jumping in to fix things.
Oh my gosh, the fixing energy. I have been there. Even with the best intentions, it can be so frustrating when someone's just trying to hear you, you know?
The worst. So yeah, communication is huge, but there's more. The second strategy is all about shared decision-making.
Okay, so not just compromising to keep the peace, but actually finding solutions that work well for both people. Got it.
Exactly. And the source uses their apartment search as an example.
Oh, right, because she wanted to live in a totally different neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But instead of just giving in to what Jake wanted, they actually sat down and talked about what they each valued in a living space.
So it's about really understanding each other's needs, not just the logistics of where you're going to live.
Yes. And then you can brainstorm ways to make it work for both people.
I love that. It's like shifting from me versus you to how do we make this work as a team?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we've got communication, collaboration. What are the last two strategies in this power balancing toolkit?
So the third one is all about taking responsibility. Like both Emma and Jake have this aha moment where they realize their own role in creating the imbalance.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Emma sees that she has a pattern of deferring to Jake, and he realizes he needs to be more mindful of her feelings.
And no one's blaming each other.
No, that's the key. It's not about placing blame, it's about self-awareness.
I like that. Owning your own stuff.
Exactly. And the final strategy, it's all about boundaries.
Okay, so how does that work?
They actually have this conversation, like a real heart-to-heart, about what they each need to feel safe and respected in the relationship.
So it's almost like creating the ground rules for a healthy dynamic, right?
Yes, but it's not a one-time thing. The source emphasizes that finding balance is an ongoing process. It's not like you hit a finish line and you're good to go.
Because relationships are always evolving, right?
Yeah.
What works at one point might not work later on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's okay. What matters is being able to adapt together.
You know what they say? Relationships are a marathon, not a sprint.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
You gotta pace yourself right. Find that rhythm as a couple.
It makes you wonder, though, like how has our own definition of a balanced relationship,
Yeah.
how has that changed over time?
Right. Like, what does that even mean to us in this moment? Because it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Well, what I found so fascinating was how this book, while it focuses on romantic relationships, it really got me thinking about power dynamics everywhere.
You know, 100%. It's not just about romance. It's friendships, family.
Work.
Totally. Like, are you comfortable speaking up in those relationships? Or do you find yourself holding back?
It's almost like holding up a mirror to all the areas of your life and asking, am I showing up fully here? Or am I dimming my own light a little bit?
Wow, I like that. Dimming your own light. Because it's not always intentional, is it?
No. Sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it.
Which is why these conversations are so important. So as you go about your day, think about this. What's one small step you can take to create a little more balance in your own life?
It could be anything from finally speaking up about that thing you've been avoiding, or
Or just practicing listening with a little more, I don't know, curiosity.
yes, because no matter how small the step, it all adds up.
It really does. Your voice matters. Your needs matter. You deserve to feel empowered in every connection you make. That's it for today's deep dive.
Until next time.